Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Glowing Card Gaming. And again, I'm your host, Adam. Just wanted to talk a little bit tonight about um, the Broncos and their performance. Um, and, you know, with every win, I mean, everybody gets more and more confident, and that um, everybody, you know, becomes more and more of a believer. For the most part, I think that's true. But it's tough for me, even on this. It's now been a 4 game winning streak. They just beat the Minnesota Vikings, which, you know, I admit I was wrong about that game. I thought Minnesota was going to win that. I called it 27-20 for Minnesota. Um, and had they scored one more touchdown, I mean, I would have almost called it again the score exact, you know. But, you know, what is it? If wishes were fishes, we'd all eat sushi. So I don't know what it is. Um, but all of that being said, I think that you know this the Denver D again looked great. I think they are. Uh, there's no issue. I don't have any more issues with them. They looked actually really tight and really good um, against Minnesota. Now again, the offense was the problem, and they didn't look all that great or tight. The the problem with the Denver offense right now is that they have to play flawless. They can't take any penalties, whether they're dumb or Garrett Bowles taking that what it's a penalty where there's too many linesmen on one side of the ball. He didn't check in on the second play in a row. Now I'm sure he thought he did. He probably made the signal, they didn't catch it. Right? The refs didn't see it, therefore he didn't report in. Whatever that is, right? And instead of 3rd and 1, and we know because they ran the play and everybody did this blocking and all the motions and stuff, and Russell Wilson would have made it about 2 to 3 yards, and they needed one. So they pick up that first down, and it's first and goal, like inside inside the 15 at that point. And the way they were moving the ball, I'm pretty sure that's a touchdown. But because of the penalty, now instead of 3rd and 1, it's 3rd and 6. And instead of getting the first down on the quarterback sneak, they now do like a run up the middle. They get 3 yards, but now it's 4th and 3. So they end up settling for a field goal instead of getting the touchdown. And then the same thing with whatever happened on the next drive. We're down there in the red zone, and like we got a penalty, and then we got a sack, and then it was like 4th and 22. You know, without that penalty, either one of those penalties, Denver scores 2 touchdowns there, and then you know that later part of the game doesn't really matter. Denver's up by 9 um, with Minnesota, and if Minnesota does go down a drive and score a touchdown because the D isn't quite as tight, knowing they need that stop for a win. Right? 22-21, they know they can't even allow a field goal, and they play lights out, and they put them 3 and out. I mean, that intentional grounding by I can't remember the Vikings quarterback's name, um, but the Pastronaut is what they call him. But that intentional grounding penalty, that really was the game on the Viking side too. So, and it just goes to show, even like the previous week, that every single play, every single action, every penalty is going to matter. in games that Denver is playing right now. That all the games are so tight, so close that you know those penalties can cost you the game. Those points that we didn't get could have cost us the game easily. And I hate that Denver, the offense has to play basically perfect. You can't have those penalties, you know, whether it was a slip of the mind or what. I mean, what if they had to just, they didn't get the play in time and they had a delay of game penalty? You know, to me, all of this combined tells me that Denver's good now. Um, and I probably was a little hasty on calling for Sean Payton to be fired. Um, Only because now I'm seeing what I expect out of great coaches, and I was not seeing that earlier in the season. And I guess I should take my own advice and wait 2 or 3 seasons to see what's going to happen. But it sure seemed like we were getting more of the same for the first 4, 5, 6 games, where you have players, but they may not be able to do what you want them as a coach to do, what your plan for that offense. You want to be a heavy pass offense, right? And have the scramble that can make the pass, or you want a pocket passer to really drill those outs to the flats and complete those passes and have good football awareness on where those defenders are and not throw interceptions, right? And to some extent, that is what you get out of Russell Wilson, not a pocket passer, which is what the previous 2 coaches, I think, last coach wanted to have. Is they want a pocket passer, and that's how the league is right now. They don't like a lot of scrambling quarterbacks. They like the pocket passers that, if they do get in trouble, they can scramble out and then maybe make something happen, like Mahomes or some of these other quarterbacks. But as it stands now, you know, the league wants pocket passers and a lot of passing. They kind of don't like the style of defense, the style of offense Denver is playing right now, which is you know pretty heavy run or side outs or you know things of that nature that could it'd be kind of a sloring, low scoring slog of a game. Um, and I don't think the NFL really likes that, but that's truly football. I mean, really, when you break it down, football didn't originally have a forward pass. And it wasn't until men actually died playing the game, and I think it was President Woodrow Wilson had to basically force them to institute a forward pass because everybody was crunching together because every play was a run play. It was more like rugby back then. So, and since the insertion of the forward pass, it's been more exciting of a game. It opens it up, you know, and I guess safety's always been kind of a thing. Of course, when people are dying on the field, you definitely want to make a change. So, knowing some of that, you know, you can see where the game has come from, and you can definitely see how it's advanced over the years. I mean, I had season tickets. My family did when Elway was quarterback back in the day, when I was really little, and you can tell the game is much different from when he started and even when he ended, right? It was so much faster by the time he ended, so much rougher in terms of Well, I mean, I think about those hits Larry Zonka put on receivers coming across the middle, where he just stick out his arm and stiff arm them, and it wasn't a penalty. That was a legal tackle back then, and receivers had to deal with it, and quarterbacks and stuff had to make sure they were much safer with their passing and leading those receivers not to do that. So as the game has progressed and more safety rules have come in, they really like the exciting, long, throwing catches and running away with it from the entire team, throwing it past the team, all of that, and high scoring games and stuff. But teams that generally win are more boring. They have those ground games that work. They're going to run 40, 50 times on you, and you're not going to be able to stop the run enough. And especially when they're able to then, because you're trying to stop the run all the time, mix in some passing, and all of a sudden, you can't stop them. They go down the field, it's a touchdown every time. And especially later in games, mid third quarter on, if they're driving down, that's 21 points at least that they'll probably get on you. And with a staunch D like Denver has, you're not getting 21 points. You're not going to do that. Not on Denver, not after, mid third quarter. I have a hard time believing any team will do that moving forward for the remainder of the season. So getting back to what I was saying about Sean Payton and the Broncos, you know, seeing them uh, as they are now, the defense has really convinced me. I mean, they're still causing turnovers. Those turnovers, unfortunately, still aren't leading to a lot of points. If the Denver offense would start making touchdowns out of that instead of I think they had 3 turnovers and they got 3 points out of it. They had a single field goal off of the turnovers. The other 2 were punts. Unacceptable. Really unacceptable. When you get turnovers, especially on their side of the field, that's a touchdown. It's got to be. You have all the momentum. The defense tries to step up. If you can just skirt over them a couple of times, pick up a quick couple of first downs, whatever you got to do that. All of a sudden, the defense is on its heels, and now it's trying to go back and just stop you from scoring. And then you can run it and you can break them down. You can do whatever you need to do to score. But when you get the ball and it's like you're playing against a brick wall that you don't try to throw over, you just try to run into. And then you have to kick a field goal or you have to punt it away. That's not going to work. Right? So that offense has to be better. They have not yet convinced me in 4 games that they are better. They are just good enough. And I mean, I guess that's okay. You could win a Super Bowl that way. I mean, playing this way, it's a very real possibility that Denver wins out. And I heard from one of the talk shows today that one of the guys said no team wants to play Denver right now. No team wants to play Denver the way they're playing. And on the defensive side of the ball, I would agree with that. And if they have a weaker D, they definitely don't want to play Denver right now because Denver has scored um, upper 20s before. I think they had 27 or 29 or something earlier this season. So it isn't that they're not capable of scoring a bunch, but if you have really good D, odds are you know they're not going to score a lot of points. It's just then it becomes whose defense is better, and so far Denver's D has been just a bit better than the opposing team's D. Minnesota, KC, Buffalo, you know, um, Green Bay. I mean, Green Bay hasn't been that great, although they did beat the Chargers, so makes me wonder how good the Chargers are. Denver's going to play the Cleveland Browns coming up. And the Cleveland Browns have the number one defense according to most of the stats and everything. So coming up, playing them, excuse me, is going to be a challenge for Denver to score a lot of points. Now, the opposite of that is also true, is that Cleveland's offense is not very good, and they just lost their starting quarterback for the remainder of the year before last game. Now, that being said, Cleveland did win last week, but it was 13-10. They barely pulled it out. I don't think, and maybe I'm thinking about this the opposite way. Maybe Minnesota is the team that actually Denver's going to beat, and then Cleveland will be the team that they lose to. Because I thought, the next two upcoming games, Denver would be 1-1, right? And I kind of went through the remainder of the schedule. I'm not going to do that this week. I'm just going to finish this analysis and then call it good for this week. But I'm going to say it's just watching Denver moving forward. The games are going to be tight. They're going to be close. They're going to go all game. Um, they're not going to have another blowout like they did versus Miami. They're not giving up 70. In fact, if they played Miami right now, I'm pretty sure they would beat them. That same Miami team, I think Denver beats them right now. They had Denver had 3 or 4 key starters out on defense when we played them, and since they've returned and since they fired a lot of the older defensive players and given those young guys a chance, those young guys have stepped up and played lights out, and hopefully will continue to do so. Sometimes you only get one shot in the NFL, and as long as you're playing lights out, you're going to hold that starting job. And as soon as you stop, you're done. So I hope that those young players and all the changes that they made continue to be successful for them. We now can see the genius of Vance Joseph's defenses and why he was brought in to be a head coach here in Denver and why he's now the defensive coordinator in Denver. I think he's solidified his job. I don't think, I know there were people calling for his firing earlier in the season. I was not one of those. It took a lot of guts for him to come back as a defensive coordinator at the same place he got fired as a head coach. So, a lot of credit to Vance Joseph on that. Sean Payton, maybe he is the elite coach. I definitely am going to give him the rest of the season, see how it turns out before I make any further judgments. In my opinion, he's earned at least the remainder of this year and probably an extension into next year. And I don't know what his contract currently is, but I think he's going to be coaching the Denver Broncos next year. So that really is the last few games have really changed my mind on Sean Payton because I can see now him using the players to the best of their abilities with what they can do and modifying and changing those offenses, not only to what those offensive players can do, but they are adjusting to those defenses, especially those tough defenses like Minnesota. So as you were seeing that game progress, Denver wasn't really having much success in the first half. It was a lot of 3-and-outs, but then they started to see what they needed to do against the Minnesota D, and they made those adjustments. And really, they should have gotten 3 touchdowns in the second half instead of just 1 and 2 field goals. And if that type of improvement continues and actually they do start getting a lot more touchdowns, I think Denver, I mean, if they make the playoffs, it could be, they could be the team to beat out of nowhere. No one would have picked. I wouldn't have picked Denver um, as a Super Bowl contender at the beginning of the year. I can tell you that. I thought they were probably going to go um, 9-8 at the beginning of the year. I thought they would be around 500, 8-9, 9-8, somewhere in there. Um, but now things have progressed, and they're at that mark I thought they would be 5-5. Though now it seems like they are going to really start progressing. Although, they still have to play the Lions. I mean, they have some really tough games coming up. I don't know if they beat the Lions, um, but the Browns. I thought they might win against the Browns versus these two teams coming up. And I probably did have it backwards, not knowing how good that Browns D was. But now with the loss of their starting quarterback in Cleveland, I don't think they can score enough points. Um, I don't think Denver scores 20 points. I think they get 17, and I think that game probably ends. I'm gonna give Cleveland an extra field goal. Let's say 17-13. It could be 17-16. Let me go. Final prediction: 17-16. Denver by 1 point over the Cleveland Browns this week coming up. Again, just based off of both teams having those solid Ds, I just think Denver's offense is better than the Browns' offense, and eventually they'll find a way to get a touchdown and another field goal somewhere. They'll work it out. So, you know, I don't think Denver scores 20. If they do, and that's something that we could see this week because I think we've been seeing slight improvements for the Denver offense. It could be at any moment they just bust it out, and you might see a huge victory on that side of the ball all of a sudden. Like everything just starts working. They're just seeing the entire field. They know where they need to go to get open. The pass is there. The passes are there. The running lanes are open. It might happen that way, and all of a sudden, everything just flows. It does happen like that occasionally. Is that this upcoming week? Who knows? Who knows when that'll happen? I think it'll surprise everybody. Um, so, not counting on that, I'm going to go 17-16 Denver. And I thought about even adding another field goal to the Broncos, making it 2016, but that Cleveland D is the best, right? So I don't think they score 20. I just don't. So I'm going to leave it there. 17-16 Denver this upcoming week. Yep. If you disagree with me, go ahead and leave your comments. Let me hear from you. Always willing to hear, and if there's a good enough comment, I might respond. So be looking for that. Subscribe, like, share, blah, 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 all that stuff. But the really important thing that I say at the end of all the videos, just be good to each other. And I'll see you next time.